Hi, Bill. Welcome.
Hey, Tony. Thank you.
The draft was, I don't know, 3 weeks ago. What would you say has been accomplished with Jedrick Wills' transition to left tackle in this time?
Yeah. So what we've done, Tony, is we've attacked this thing virtually, through our meetings, and the way that we've laid out our program, I thought it's quite interesting. So we've basically given players video installs to look at and to hear and try to disseminate information in that avenue. Then what we've done is we've kind of drilled it down where we've met as a group, asked questions. Then we've tested them. We've used the Cahoots program to test the players and the rookies. And then we've also done some individualized work with them as well. So we're trying to maximize our time, efforts, and all trying to exhaust every conceivable avenue we can, to teach the players, especially to catch them up to speed to where the veterans are at.
Can I just follow up and ask, what do you see on film now of him or on video of him employing what you've been teaching him to do?
Yeah, so we've given him a number of drills to do, and we've just really started out with real basic things. Just really looking at stance, putting him in the left-handed stance, which he's been in before. And so what we've done is, we've gotten him on video. He sends the video back, and it's and I can coach him through all the nuances and the techniques of what we want to get him into. Additionally, I've also sent him, and we'll sit down and watch, tackles that I've had in my career that have done the same types of things. So it's been really positive, and he's really he's a sponge for information. He's absorbed all the content that you can give him, and he wants more. So I'm really excited about him, and I'm eager, at some point to get on the field with him.
Thank you.
All right, Scott Petrick, you're up.
Coach, with Jedrick, what did you see in the pre-draft process that made you think he'd be able to make the switch from right tackle to left tackle?
Yeah, so, when you watch a player on film, I think you come away, your takeaways are, well, this guy's a good player, he's solid, he has athletic ability. But with Jedrick, it was a little bit different in that you could feel him on film. He came alive on tape, and you got excited about what he was doing throughout the course of the game. And then, a lot of times people talk about makeup and they talk about character and all these other things, which are great, in which he does have. But, he's got these intangibles that show up in tangible ways on film where, you watch him finish, you watch him detail a technique, you watch his consistent effort and his stamina throughout the course of the game from start to finish. And I think that's what was, the appeal for me. And I think our scouts did a great job. And organizationally, I think everybody contributed to his selection and really spoke highly of him, and all the background work that our scouts did prior to the draft and also at the combine just spoke volumes for the player. So when you put all those pieces together, it's not a hard decision to make.
There's some people that think the switch from one side to the other is harder than other people. Other people think it's not that big a deal. What about you? Is it significant that he's having to make that switch after playing right tackle in high school and college?
I think, when I was looking at him in the draft, I thought, well, I had Tyron Smith in Dallas, and we all know that story. But the one that sticks out for me is when I was in Oakland, I had a player by the name of Barry Sims. And during that time, Barry had come to us as an undrafted free agent. He had an injury sustained in an all-star game and wasn't drafted that spring. And so he ended up in the World League. He kind of bounced around a little bit. And then we had him in camp. And we had 2 first-round selections in Matt Stinchcomb and Mo Collins. And Mo Collins, we end up moving into guard. And then Stinchcomb was really a fine player out of Georgia who got hurt during that period of time in training camp. And so really, our backs were against the wall, and I started moving players around. And I remember John Gruden telling me, Barry Sims, he wanted to get rid of him. He wanted them out of the training camp. And I asked him, I said, just give me a couple more days with this guy. I think he can play. And he reminded me a lot of John Fina, for those of you who remember Fina up in Buffalo. And so just give me a couple days with him. I think he can play. This guy has got some talent. And we put him over on the left side, and he was a fixture there for about 6-7 years, and he ended up in San Francisco. But Jedrick reminded me of Barry just because of the athletic movement. And, Barry was not the biggest, stoutest left tackle in the league at the time. In fact, he was a little bit of the runt of the litter of the line that we had in Oakland. When Lincoln Kennedy was there, he was 370 pounds, and Frank Middleton was 360. Collins was 360. Barrett Roberts was 350. So when I got Barry Sims, he was 320. If you could believe that, that was the smallest guy we had at the time. But going back to the comparison, I really thought that Jedrick reminded me of Barry, and he could make that switch easily because of his athleticism.
Thanks.
All right, Nate, you're up.
Hey, Bill. I was wondering, we were talking about that example and Tyron Smith. What do those experiences tell you are the main keys to helping a guy make this switch?
Well, I think the willingness, number one. You have to want to go over there, and I think Tyron was really wide open to it, and nothing fazed him because he's such a competitor. So when we made the switch, it was seamless for him. He had a few bumps in the road, like they're all going to have, but he was quite confident mentally that he could make the switch. From a muscle memory standpoint, you've got to get grooved, and a lot of that really depends on the training and the reps and all that. But when you're grooving a player, they need constant, consistent reps day in, day out. To get their game up to the level that you want it. And that's any position that you flex with. I remember, let's say we had Zach Martin, who we moved from a college left tackle to right guard. We did the same thing in Washington with Sheriff. He was a left tackle at Iowa, and he came over and played right guard for us when he was drafted. So, throughout my career, I've had a lot of guys that I've mixed and matched and moved around. And one of the other guys that comes to mind is Damian Woody. He was a center for New England and was drafted in the first round. And when he hit free agency, he ended up in Detroit and got hurt and was looking for another position to play. And when I was at the Jets, Mike Tannenbaum did a great job in signing him, and we made a right tackle out of him for years, and he did a great job there as well. So it's interesting. Some guys can make the switches, some guys can't, but it's always fun. If they want to do it, they'll make the switch.
All right, Jeff, you're up.
Bill, can you tell us what is going on at the right guard position?
Yeah, so I'm still getting familiarized with all the players. I haven't met them all yet. Just only virtually I've done that with them. And so, we haven't really set a depth chart or really listed a starter or really named the right guard position. So that's up for grabs. But I really believe we've got some excellent players in there, and Wyatt Teller, and Drew Forbes, and Colby Gossett, and Willie Wright. So there's a lot of candidates. There will be a lot of time for competition. So I think that'll sort itself out as we move along. It's always subject to change, and I'm just going to keep assessing and evaluating the position as we move forward. But there's enough candidates in there that I think that someone will rise to the occasion and take over that spot.
All right, Dan, you're up.
Hey, Coach. With Jedrick Wills, is it sort of assumed at this point that you guys want him to be your week one starter at left tackle, or is it too early to say that?
No, I don't think so. I think whenever you draft a player as high as we've drafted Jedrick, I've always felt that you've got to plug him in and play him immediately. That's why you draft him. So no, that doesn't concern me, scare me, bother me in any respect. So I'm quite confident that he's capable of being our left tackle. They're, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to go through some lumps, and they're going to have some times where they're going to get beat, but the best in the game get beat. And I think what we're trying to do is establish a kind of a mode of consistency with him so that he can get confidence in his techniques and be that consistent player for us. And then I really put a lot of stock in the rate of improvement over the long haul of the season. So looking at those incremental games from week to week, from the first quarter of the season to the second to the third to how he finishes, I think that'll all be assessed and evaluated as we move forward.
And then can I ask you about the guy on the other side too, your new right tackle, Jack Conklin? Kind of what you see in.
I really like Jack. Having a chance, I watched him coming out of Michigan State. I thought he was outstanding there. And what he's done in Tennessee, early in his career, I know he had some misfortune with injury, but last year, he really came on. He had a really good year. And you talk about a system fit, you couldn't get a more perfect, tackle in free agency than Jack. He fits the mode for the wide zone game. His pass protection sets. You watch him how he short sets and he jumps. At the line of scrimmage, which is a tough skill to acquire. And then, of course, in third down and later downs, you can watch him set vertically, and you could see his variance of sets that he has. So he has the toolbox and he has the skill set, to do quite well. And what I really like about Jack is, he's a player that's really thirsty, for new techniques and new ways of doing things. He's wide open, from that aspect. So I'm really looking forward, to digging down in the trenches with him and seeing how we can tweak some things and help his game.
All right, Tony, you're up.
Okay, Bill, you've been around so long, you've coached every possible offensive line system in the NFL. I know that. Could you, first of all, has there been any system you've been in that has used the wide zone as much as Coach Stefanski is going to use it? And two,
Go ahead.
Okay, could you then tell me what teams those were in your career?
Oh, sure. Well, the Jets, under Rex, we ran the ball like crazy, and that was a wide zone system. And then going to Dallas, we ran the wide zone. And when I went into Washington under Sean McVay, we ran the wide zone for a couple of years. And the last few years in Washington, we had gotten away from it. It was really a function of the type of linemen that we had. So we became a little bit more tight zone, a little bit more gap-oriented, power-oriented. But I've been around the wide zone since the University of Wisconsin in 1990. So I've had exposure to it, having been in the AFC West in Oakland when Alex Gibbs was at its height. I watched it first-handedly, and we adopted a lot of things from that system and implemented them with our own team. So I've always been a proponent of the wide zone, so I feel right at home with it.
Okay.
All right, Scott, you're up.
Coach, is Kevin and you try to implement this new wide zone system, how delayed are you guys in the implementation with the fact that there's no off-season program, you can't get your hands on guys physically and have to do it all remotely?
Well, I think everybody's in the same boat. I mean, that's the one thing about this situation we're all in right now. Nobody really has a competitive advantage, but we're trying to maximize every conceivable way of teaching players, of, like I mentioned, disseminating information. I've turned my own home office here into like a classroom where I can turn my screen around, have TV on. I'm fortunate that way. I got the room to do that. Whereas a lot of coaches on our staff, they're working out of their basement. They're trying to jerry rig, kind of a film setup for their players. But what we've done is we've really tried to take the cut-ups and all the video libraries that we have and try to give that to the players throughout our meetings. And it's been challenging in one way, but in another, it's been really good. We've had a lot of good dialogue. We've exposed them to the things that we want to do. It won't be as though they haven't heard it before or been around a wide zone system. I think by and large, everybody's had some type of exposure. Everybody in the league runs some type of wide zone or tight zone game in some respects. So I think in that, that manner, they've had good exposure, and we're just giving them a little bit more and delving in and kind of drilling down some of the techniques that we want them to learn.
I mean, you've been around for a long time, and we're in.
Quit saying that. You make me feel old.
we're in these unprecedented times.
What's that?
I mean, we're in these really weird time and strange times.
I had to shave my beard to get online with you guys.
Could you ever imagine having a coach like this, and did it take to get used to it?
No, it's crazy. I was thinking about that because 9 weeks ago I'd never heard of Zoom. And now I'm trying to buy as much stock as I can. But no, it's challenging, but it's fun. And I got to tell you, between Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Google Album, I mean, what they have us doing is absolutely crazy. If you could imagine working off your iPad to show film through your screen, through your personal computer, you're just finding all different ways to be creative and trying to kind of set up a meeting room atmosphere similar to what you would have at the facility. So, no, I never thought that this would ever happen in a zillion years, not in our lifetime. But I think we're all adapting. I think we're all, especially the young players. I mean, my God, they're so technologically savvy in every respect. My hat goes off to them. And I think this is no big deal for them, but they just want to get back on the grass again and work. But I think when it comes to technology, they're pretty well adverse at it.
All right, we'll go with 4 more. Nate, you are up. Nate, you there?
Yes. Could you just tell us your early impressions of Kevin Stefanski in his new role? And I know when you say you're all in the same boat, you are in some ways, but you guys are different in that this is a first-year head coach, in a new staff trying to install your schemes and so far the off season, has been radically different than it normally would. So,
right.
How do you see his makeup, so far through this process, and how do you think he's going to be able to guide you through this time? When you guys really do face, an uphill battle given the circumstances.
Well, first off, I think the world of Kevin and what he's done and accomplished in a very short period of time that we've been together. If you just consider the fact that we really didn't start till the first week in February as an entire staff, and then in the following month in February, at midpoint of February, we're at the NFL Combine, and then there's very shortly after, by mid-March, we're gone, and we've all went our separate ways. That dynamic, is interesting because he's been able to put together a staff, implement a system, coordinate everybody's role, and not only from the facility but from afar. And so his ability to communicate and connect is outstanding. And the message that he gives the players, on a daily and weekly basis is really no different than what it feels like if you were sitting in the team room and listening to him speak. So he's very well thought out. He's well measured. He gets it. He understands players. He's been around some of the best players in the league. And then just as a leader, I'm so impressed with his ability to communicate his message and his vision to the team. And it's been well received. I know it has by our group in the offensive line. The players, they feed off of that. And they understand, that the coach has their best well-being, in mind, and he wants them to do well. And we're in a tough spot, which everybody is, but he's been extremely positive. And, that's the one thing I got to say is that he's upbeat, he's outgoing. He reaches out. He's got a really good way about himself and very even keeled and doesn't get too emotional, doesn't get too down, and just keeps, forging forward. So I've been impressed in every aspect. So, yeah, I'm really fortunate and really honored to be on the staff.
All right, we're going with 3 more. Dan, Jeff, and then Tony. Dan, you're up first.
Coach, I want to ask you about a couple of the veterans in that room, JC and Joel.
Mm-hmm.
What have they been like during this virtual process? And you've kind of gotten a feel for them, and are they able to kind of offer that leadership even though it's all virtual? They aren't in a room together for this spring program.
They really have. JC has, the day of the draft, when we drafted Jedrick and Nick, he texted me immediately, wanted to reach out to our new draftees and extend himself and let them know, that he was welcoming them into the group. And, for a veteran player to do that's awesome. You don't find that too often. And that's special. And he knows, he was in Green Bay under really good tutelage, and here, and, he's a pro and he understands, what it is and where he's at in his career. And I think he's got a lot more years to go, anyhow, but just for him from a personal aspect to reach out and welcome those guys, that was really cool. My hat goes off to him, as well as Joel. Joel has reached out. He's talked to the guys. He's really the kind of the catalyst, him and JC, they had that veteran leadership in the room. And by God, these guys have, especially Joel, look at how many position coaches and coordinators he's gone through in his short career, and hopefully we can bring some stability, some continuity, and consistency to the group in that respect. But no, I'm really happy to be around those guys, and I'm sure I'll learn a ton from them because these players, they know a lot of things, and they can certainly help me grow and help me become a better coach. So yeah, I'm just very fortunate, to be able to coach them.
All right, Jeff, you're up.
I asked you about the right guard situation earlier, Bill.
Right.
2 questions. Where does Chris Hubbard fit into what you're doing? And the guard position with his wide zone blocking, is that more difficult than for a tackle, or how does that fit in?
I think it's challenging for everybody. What guard, center, all those techniques are a little bit different because of where you've, your angled departures, who's your matchup, are you playing an even front where the center's uncovered or an over front where the guard's covered? So I think that all changes. But I think that it's equally challenging across the board. To your other question about Chris, I really like Chris. I think, I remember a couple of years ago while I was in Washington, we did him in free agency, and I really, really liked him. I thought he had the athleticism, to come in and be a real benefit as a swing tackle at the time, and he could help our line and eventually be a starter. He had that capability, and I know he played really well his first year here. And then I'm just really anxious to get on the field with him and try to elevate his game, and help him in any way that I can, because I think he's a really good football player. I know his heart's in it. He has swing ability. He could also play a jumbo tight end, although we got a lot of those guys right now. But no, I really like Chris. I think he's got a lot of value and a lot of upside, and he will definitely help us at some point. And you can never have enough of those guys. I went through 72 of them in 2 years. So I know that there's, we had 72 different line combinations in Washington. We were just riddled with injuries, and the value of a player like Chris is, you can't make up for it.
All right, Tony, you're up.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned Alex Gibbs. When he was running the wide zone in Denver, Bill, was he the only one? How rare was it then? How prevalent is it now? And why do you like it so much?
Yeah, interesting. I think this thing has a little bit of a history to it. I remember, Howard Mudd ran it here in Cleveland when he was here. I remember Jim McNally, who's been my mentor forever, was running it down in Cincinnati, and when they had Icky Woods, and they were terrific with it. And one of the stories Alex talks about is how he visited with Jim McNally and wanted to learn about the zone system. And so, I think he adopted some of Jim's principles and thoughts, and then he went ahead and put his own interpretation on it and went ahead and innovated some new techniques along with it. So I remember in '95 we played Denver when Mike Shanahan first got the job at Denver, and they were running all the West Coast stuff that Bill Walsh was running. And then they were okay with it, but I think Alex wasn't okay with it, and he decided that he wanted to get into the zone game, and that's where they began to flourish. And he implemented the wide zone system, and they never looked back. I mean, they had incredible success. And I like it personally because, it's a system where, it's based on trust, all five guys doing the same thing, and it's got to be orchestrated in the proper manner, or else you won't get the results that you want. And everybody's tied together. It's not like you got a power play where you have moving pieces within your scheme. This is one basic general scheme where you're covering defensive linemen, you're displacing them, you're trying to create different cuts for the back, different reads for the back based on the front that you're seeing. So I like it because it's simple. It has a simplicity to it, and let alone there's a physicality that you can really grow with. So all those aspects, what you're looking for in a running game, whether it be toughness, being hardcore, pounding it, being physical, not stressing your linemen, too much with too many schemes. I think there's a real value in that.
And how prevalent is it now?
I think when I look at the league, I would look at the playoff teams. Tennessee, the wide zone team. San Francisco, wide zone team. Minnesota, wide zone team. So I look back at some of the teams that are in the playoffs. Okay, and even New Orleans has really gone to more zone type schemes. There's real value in that. And I think you can create more explosive runs, and within that you can also limit negative plays or TFLs or however you want to call it. So I like that, but most importantly, it all ties in to the passing game, and it all looks the same. So we always, when we were in New York, we always talked about sameness and likeness in your run and pass game. So so many things can come off of the wide zone: the bootlegs, the waggles, the shot plays. There's just a lot of variety. It all starts out looking the same, but it's different.
All right, Nate, did you have one more?
Yeah.
All right, this will be the last one.
Okay. Coach, just a big picture football question. None of us knows what's going to happen with the virus and how everything's going to unfold in the coming months. But
right.
And I'm not asking you to make any predictions, that would be impossible. But have you allowed yourself to think about how this coming football season, if it goes on as scheduled with the league releasing the schedule, have you allowed yourself to think about how this could be just, a different look at the sport than you've ever had, than any of us have ever had? Maybe stadiums will not have, all the fans in them. Have you been grappling with just what we're all dealing with and what it could do for everyone?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I really feel that the league and also the organization, they'll make the best decision possible. I think they have everybody's best interest in health and safety at heart. I don't think anyone's going to do anything foolish. That's my take. I do appreciate the fact that we are trying, to move forward and go forward. But I've kind of been pragmatic my whole life. So I take it day by day, and I just try to control the things I can control. And I really don't try to worry too much about it. And I think it'll all work out in the end. That's how I always looked at life in general. So I think at some point, hopefully the medical society, some of the people working on the virus find a way, find a vaccine for this. I'm hopeful of that. I'm hopeful it happens sooner than later. And, Yeah, I'm watching all the healthcare workers and what they're going through, and the stress on their families and their lives. There's no reason to think that we couldn't, that we couldn't play if everything's in order and everything's right. But I know, I just feel that the league and the organizations and the owners will do what's in the best interest of everybody. They're not going to put anybody at risk.